Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Great. So today we're tackling teaching English as a second language.
Oh, excellent topic.
We found this awesome guide, super practical. You know,
Awesome. I mean, whether you're, a newbie teacher or you've been at it for years,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
always something new to learn.
Totally. And this guide is packed with tips and strategies.
So what are we waiting for? Let's dive
All
in.
right, let's go.
Uh,
So, first things first, we've got to know our students.
Absolutely. You have to know where they're starting from, like their level of English.
Right, right.
This guide suggests using different assessments.
Okay, like what kind of assessment?
Placement tests are pretty common.
Yeah, placement test makes sense.
And also just having conversations with the students to see how they're doing.
Oh, yeah, conversational assessments. Those are really helpful, I think.
Definitely. It's not just about slapping a label on them like beginner or advanced.
Oh, no, for sure not. Everyone's different.
Exactly. You need to understand their individual strengths and weaknesses.
I see what you mean. Like you could have two students who are both considered intermediate, but one might be great at reading, but then struggle when it comes to speaking, right?
Exactly. And the other one might be a grammar whiz, but have a really hard time with pronunciation.
Gotcha. So it's about understanding their specific needs.
Right. So you can tailor your lesson plans to each student.
And that leads us to the next point, lesson plans.
Yes. The guide, it compares a lesson plan to a roadmap.
A roadmap, that's a good analogy.
Right. It guides you, keeps you on track.
Okay, so how do we make those roadmaps engaging?
Well, think about it. A scenic route is a lot more fun than just driving on a boring highway.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the same with lessons. We need to keep students interested
And how do we do that?
by catering to different learning styles. Some people are visual learners, they need to see things. Others are auditory learners, they learn best by listening.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And then there are kinesthetic learners, they got to be moving, doing something.
Yeah, I'm definitely a kinesthetic learner.
So you might use visual aids for the visual learners or audio recordings for the auditory learners.
I like that, a variety of activities.
Right. Hands-on activities, games, all sorts of things to keep everyone engaged. If you see those eyes glazing over during a lecture, it's time to switch things up.
Definitely. Got to keep them on their toes. So we've got our lesson plans, our roadmap. Now, what about the vehicle?
The teaching methods?
Yeah. What kind of modern teaching methods does the guide suggest?
Well, one that's really popular these days is the communicative approach.
Okay, communicative approach. I've heard that term thrown around. What is that exactly?
It focuses on real-life communication, not just memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary lists, but actually using the language.
So, like, instead of just drilling verb conjugation.
Great, you might have them role play ordering food in a restaurant,
Oh, I like that.
or asking for directions, or having a conversation about their weekend plans.
That makes so much more sense. And it's more fun, too.
Exactly, it's about making it relevant to their lives.
Speaking of things that are relevant to our lives these days, can't forget about technology.
Oh, absolutely. Technology is a huge part of learning now.
Yeah, like what are some ways we can use tech in the classroom?
Well, there are all sorts of apps out there. Duolingo, Quizlet, those are great for independent practice.
Yeah, I've used Duolingo myself. It's pretty cool.
And platforms like Google Classroom are amazing for creating interactive lessons.
Oh, yeah, Google Classroom is a lifesaver. Helps you stay organized, too.
Exactly. It's like having a digital assistant for your classroom.
Right. But even with all the cool tech, we can't forget about the basics.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, like speaking, listening, pronunciation. How can we help students improve those skills?
Well, one thing the guide recommends is using authentic materials.
Authentic material.
Things like podcasts, news clips, movies, real-world examples of the language being used.
So, like, instead of just reading a textbook dialogue.
Right. They could listen to a podcast and try to pick out keywords, or watch a news clip and discuss the main points.
That makes it so much more engaging.
It's about making the learning process feel real, not just theoretical.
Okay, so we've got engaging lessons, we're using technology, but how do we keep students motivated?
Motivation is key.
It really is, because you can have the most amazing lesson plan, but if the students aren't motivated, it's not going to work.
Exactly. The guide emphasizes that. So how do we keep them engaged?
Yeah, what are some tips?
Well, games and quizzes are always a good way to add some fun and competition.
Those are classics for a reason.
But it also goes back to that personalization thing we talked about. If you know your students' interests, you can tie the lessons back to those things.
Oh, that's smart. Like if a student is really into music.
You could use song lyrics to teach grammar concepts, or have them write a song in English.
Wow, that would be so cool. And it would really get them invested.
That's the whole idea. When they feel like the material is relevant to them, they're much more likely to be motivated to learn.
Makes sense. All right, so we've got them engaged. They're motivated. Now, what about feedback?
Feedback is crucial. It helps students know what they're doing well and where they need to improve.
Okay, but what's the best way to give feedback?
The guide suggests using rubrics.
Rubrics. I remember those from school.
It's basically a set of criteria for evaluating student work. It lays out the expectations for each level of performance, so it's very transparent and objective.
I see. So it helps take the guesswork out of grading.
Exactly. And it also encourages students to self-assess and provide feedback to their peers, which is a great skill to develop.
It's like creating a more collaborative learning environment.
Exactly. It's not just about the teacher giving all the feedback, it's about students learning from each other, too.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about different aspects of teaching, but one thing that really stood out to me in this guide was the emphasis on adaptability. Teaching in person is different from teaching online.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole different ballgame.
So how do we adapt our strategies to those different settings?
Well, communication is key in both settings. You need to be able to communicate clearly with your students.
Right, for sure.
But in a traditional classroom, you also have to think about creating a supportive and connected environment.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You can do that by fostering a sense of community, encouraging open dialogue, and being mindful of their social and emotional needs.
So it's not just about teaching the language, it's about creating a positive and supportive learning experience.
Exactly. You want them to feel comfortable taking risks and making mistakes because that's how they're going to learn.
I totally agree. And the great thing is, all of these strategies that we've been talking about, they're all backed by research.
Research, yeah, that's important.
Yeah. The guide mentions studies from universities like Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. So, these aren't just random ideas. They've been tested and proven effective.
It's like having a team of educational rock stars backing you up. Speaking of effective teaching, all this talk about engaging methods makes me think about this time I observed a teacher using storytelling to teach vocabulary.
Oh, storytelling. That's a great way to capture students' attention.
It was amazing. The students were completely hooked. You could see their imaginations working. It reminded me that learning can be both effective and enjoyable.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, finding those creative ways to make learning come alive. So as we wrap up our deep dive into teaching English, I want to leave you with a question. If you were designing your ideal English learning experience, what would be its most unique element? What would make it truly stand out and inspire your students? Think about that. Let your creativity flow.
Wow, that's a great question. I'm going to have to think about that one.
I hope you do. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you later.